Starting in 1984 and continuing to this day, the Transformers is a franchise with a long history and deep lore behind it. And almost like an archaeologist looking at sediment layers, you can start seeing striations in the Transformers that start marking off specific eras in the timeline. The first major schism in the Transformers franchise happens pretty early on in 1986. You can kind of break it down into pre-movie and post-movie, as the 1986 Transformers movie really shook up the status quo and changed a lot of the Transformers franchise for years to come. If you want to be more morbid about it, you could break it down as before and after the death of Optimus Prime. It kind of can't be understated how much Transformers changes after 1986 and the death of Optimus Prime, but we're not going to focus on that morbid can of worms. That's a topic for a whole nother video. Instead, we're going to focus on some of the more fun, space fantasy aspects that get introduced after 1986 and until Generation 1's end. In the latter half of Generation 1, we start seeing a lot more influences from things like heavy metal and 2000 AD work their way in, as no longer are we confined to the terrestrial Autobot-Decepticon war on Earth, but instead are now in a galactic-spanning adventure featuring lots of spaceships, starfighters, and strange space monsters. And the biggest, baddest space monster on the block is the Decepticon city, Scorponok. Released in 1987, Scorponok was one of the flagship pieces for that year's toy line. He's not the flagship piece of the 1987 toy line. That distinction goes to his Autobot counterpart, Fortress something. I don't remember his name right now. I think it might have been like Spaceship Bruce. Anyway, Scorponok pulls triple duty, as he is a triple changer. He turns from a robot to a city to a scorpion. We'll start with the giant scorpion, as that's probably my favorite mode for him. The Scorpion mode has a lot of details that really tell you the titanic scale of this character, from the large battleship-like guns to the small windows and vents that are detailed through stickers. He doesn't have a huge amount of playability in alt mode, but he has a nice little gimmick where if you roll him around, cams activate to move his scorpion legs. Scorponok is the leader of the Decepticon headmasters, who all have bestial alt modes. Mindwipe is a bat, Skullcruncher some kind of crocagator, and Weird Wolf say, hold on, let me check these notes here. Wolf. Yes, a scorpion named Scorponok is pretty on the nose, but I think it really communicates just how vicious and dangerous this guy is as the leader of a unit full of vicious and dangerous creatures. And due to its sheer kaiju size, the Scorpion alt mode has a real intimidating presence when compared to the other Decepticon headmasters and even the other Decepticon leaders. In my opinion, out of his two alt modes, the Scorpion mode is the best realized, as it doesn't strike me as a simple beast like the other Decepticon headmasters, but instead evokes the feeling of a titanic battle platform, not too dissimilar to the large-scale vehicles seen in Gurren Lagann. But as previously mentioned, Scorponok is a triple changer, so that means there's more to this show than just one big old scorpion. Scorponok is what we would know in modern nomenclature as a Titan figure. He has an alt mode of a base meant to house other smaller Transformers. Scorponok's city or base mode is a little less than ideal, as it's pretty shallow on the details. To transform him, pretty much what you gotta do is raise the claws up and spread eagle the robot mode. There's no hiding that. Flip out some ramps, add a couple small details, and hey, you got a city. Or at least you got some sort of battle platform. Scorponok's base mode's definitely long, that's where most of the details are added. And he has these towers that protrude from either side of his legs that definitely don't look like halves of a gun. The center atrium of Scorponok gets the most love, as you get a lot of fun little antenna and doodads to add in. So who resides in Scorponok City, USA? Well, we've got Lord Zarak and Fast Track. Let's start with Zarak first, since he is Scorponok's headmaster. Zarak is a relatively diminutive figure, as he is the same size as the other headmasters, and he's cast in a tan plastic with purple limbs. Despite being the leader, the figure's not really any more intimidating or regal compared to his contemporaries. In fact, he looks positively average. Also included in Scorponok City is Fast Track, a primarily gray drone with some fun orange accents. Both the Autobot and the Decepticon City bots had one or two little figures to accompany them. In this case, Fast Track turns into a little tank that's meant to go up and down the various ramps of Scorponok, and can also be launched off the center platform. And really, that's about it for Scorponok City mode. There's not a lot to do. The nightlife really sucks, the restaurant scene's pretty bad, and the traffic's god-awful. You can still have fun with it though. If you got a lot of Headmasters, Titan Masters, Micromasters, and other stuff, you can populate the city and make it a little extra lively. It's definitely Scorponok's weakest alt mode, and I think when compared to the neighboring cities of Metroplex, Triptychon, and Fortress Maximus, it's probably the weakest of the city bots as well. Let's get out of this town and move on to Scorponok's robot mode. Scorponok's robot mode is impressive and imposing, as we see some of the beast mode elements incorporate themselves into the robot aesthetic. This includes the large claw hands, the stinger tail on his back, and most interestingly, the scorpion head becoming a helmet for the robot mode. This helmet and head combo highlights one of the major oddities in the figure. See, Lord Zarak is a normal-sized headmaster, and Scorponok's body is pretty large. So to make up for the proportional differences, this helmet does a lot of the heavy lifting. This design oddity is corrected in the modern Generations War for Cybertron Earthrise Scorponok, which makes him a double headmaster like his contemporary Fortress Maximus. Scorponok gets a shield that comes from the central building in his base mode, and those two towers that suspiciously look like guns, well, they combine to form one big gun. I always find the idea of accessories and weapons for the city bots a little ridiculous. I mean, this dude is carrying a rifle the size of a skyscraper. Weird head aside, Scorponok's still a dynamic looking figure thanks to all the fun little details on him, the great sculpt work, and the garish but fun color scheme. I'm of two minds when I see Scorponok's robot mode. On one side I can see the powerful warrior that was imagined by Andrew Wildman and Jeff Sr. on the pages of Marvel Comics. On the other side I see a bloated mechanical monstrosity that'd be like if Baron Harkonnen had a mecha suit. Maybe not the best example, but I feel like Scorponok's robot mode can either be a fierce warrior or a monstrous despot. And both of these are valid ways of looking at Scorponok's characterization depending on which road of continuity you follow, whether that's the Western or Eastern path. In the US and European continuities, Scorponok is a barbarous Decepticon warlord who is binary bonded to the unscrupulous, power-hungry Lord Zarak, an alien from the planet Nebulos. Lord Zarak, real name Mo Zarak, and that's a fact, was a Nebulan politician who used the fracas of the Autobot-Decepticon war to attain a higher power by teaming up with the Decepticons. Scorponok, and by extension Zarak, eventually become Decepticon leader, taking control from, I think, Ratbat at that point? Decepticon leadership's contentious, so it takes a minute to figure out. The important part is that Scorponok was leader of the Decepticons when Unicron attacked Cybertron. Both Optimus Prime and Scorponok set aside their differences to fight the greater threat, and Scorponok lays down his life to save all Cybertronians. Now that's pretty much only if you read the comic books, and even then there's a lot of details that I skipped. If you watch the Sunbow cartoon, Scorponok's just Lord Zarak's mecha suit. He appears in the Rebirth series finale, and that's it. He doesn't do a lot.
You were the idiot who opened the plasma energy chamber, Galvatron.
Silence! There is much to do. We will attack other planets. We will suck them dry. We will rebuild the planet 100 times more powerful than Cybertron. And I will rule the galaxy!
Who will rule the galaxy?
Me! It is my destiny!
We shall see, Galvatron.
Now this all changes if you go over to Japan. See, in the Japanese G1 continuity, there are no Nebulans and Nebulos. The Headmasters are not aliens partnered with the Transformers. Instead, they themselves are just diminutive Transformers. To survive the harsh environments of the big wide galaxy, these fun-sized Transformers made larger bodies for themselves called Transtectors, essentially mecha suits. These small Transformers made their home on the planet Master, a harsh and unforgiving planet. This colony was led by Fortress Maximus. However, the corrupt and power-hungry Scorponok began stoking the flames of civil war to achieve power. This insurrection failed, and Scorponok, along with his followers, were banished from the planet, eventually joining the Decepticons off-world. Upon joining the Decepticon cause, Scorponok and his crew of headmasters immediately began discussing ways to kill Galvatron and take power for themselves. There's a lot of shenanigans and mix-em-ups and goof-em-ups in the Headmasters anime, But suffice it to say, when Galvatron was finally killed by an iceberg in the power of friendship, Scorponok turned to his crew and said,
It's free real estate.
not only crowning himself Decepticon leader, he also took the title of Emperor of Terror, because Scorponok is about as subtle as an atomic bomb. Scorponok decides to make his way to Earth and take over the planet, just like any good villain. He decides to strip mine it for all its resources, culminating in a final confrontation between him and Fortress Maximus. In second verse, same as the first, Fortress Maximus completely destroys Scorponok. Well, not completely. Just like any good villain, Scorponok finds a way to come back, and is a shiny new toy no less. So G1 Scorponok, there's a few different ways to look at him. From the brutish warrior, to the cunning mastermind, to the really goofy Saturday morning cartoon villain in the Headmasters. The G1 Scorponok toy is super charming in my opinion. He's a bit bloated, he's a bit weird, but all the G1 toys have their oddities. The figure has a lot of the elements and attributes that I really like about the latter half of G1. He's a big, crazy, space fantasy character. He has a lot of great mechanical details, and a really just fun and striking design with a garish color palette to top it all off. He's a great addition to the long line of succession that is Decepticon leaders. Whether that's Megatron, Shockwave, Rat-Bat, or Galvatron, he's a fine addition to just about any Decepticon lineup.